crazy out there, which is just great. So hopefully you get your snow tires on. Drive carefully when you leave tonight. If you would, please stand with me for our pledge, and our invocation will be by Councilmember Neese. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. God, we acknowledge your holiness and give you honor. We are in awe of your greatness and majesty, and we know of your goodness and mercy. Your love extends to all. We humbly ask for your Spirit to guide us in our deliberations tonight, so that your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. To your glory we pray for your continued goodness and of provisions. We ask that you have mercy on our failings, and that you keep us humble as we serve. Lead us with your wisdom. God, we ask that you provide wellness and safety to the men and the women who serve and protect this city, in this county, throughout this state and this nation, both here and abroad. I ask that this in the name of Jesus Christ and for his glory. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Denise, if you would please call the roll.
Councilmember Shaw
Is with us online. Thank you.
on Zoom, okay. Gulick. Here. Neese.
Present?
Owen.
Here.
Joy.
Present.
Kennedy.
Here.
Aspenlighter.
Here.
Tidswell.
Here.
Boyette. Here. Repsis.
Here.
Mayor Cole.
Here. This evening we have first order of business, our minutes from our February 12th meeting. Are there any changes or is there a motion? Councilmember Gulick.
I move we would approve the minutes, the draft minutes from February 12th, 2024 as our record of that meeting.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Boyette indicates a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is for approval. Minutes of February 12th. If as drafted, if in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Council courtesies. Councilmember Aspenlighter.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that MSUB women's basketball team won the GNAC. I saw Councilman Gulick at the game on Saturday. Great team, fun group to watch. I hope we continue to support them as they proceed forward. One more win while they're in Alaska this week and they clinch it a solo title. It would be great for our city if they sweep and sweep the GNAC tournament. We may have a chance at hosting the Western Elite 8 regional, which would be great for our community. So go Jackets.
Thank you very much. Amazing team. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. February is Black History Month, and we've just closed out the month with a open mic that was at Sacred Grounds. It was well attended with music and poetry and many people participating. So we just feel very proud that our city can get together for these kinds of events. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council courtesies this evening. Seeing none, we do have a proclamation this evening in recognition of Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And our proclamation reads as follows. Whereas colorectal cancer is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States among men and women combined. And whereas colorectal cancer is one of the few cancers that can be prevented with timely screening, but 1 in 3 eligible Americans do not get up-to-date screening. Whereas colorectal cancer is estimated to be the #1 cancer killer for those aged 20 to 49 by 2030. And whereas Black Americans are 20% more likely to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer and about 40% more likely to die from the disease than other groups. And whereas colorectal cancer is expected to account for 11% of cancer deaths among Hispanic men and 9% of cancer deaths for Hispanic women. And whereas in 2023, there were approximately 1,520 new cases and 52,550 deaths from colorectal cancer. And whereas the national goal established by the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable is to strive to increase timely colorectal cancer screening rates to 80% in every community for all Americans eligible for screening. And whereas observing Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month during the month of March would provide a special opportunity to increase awareness and offer education on the importance of early detection and screening of colorectal cancer. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim March 2024 as Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month in Billings and encourage all citizens to get screened for this disease, which can often be treated when detected early or prevented altogether. And with that, council reports. Are there any council reports for organizations that you serve on behalf of the city? I see no council reports, so our city administrator. Chris, anything from you?
Yes, Mayor, just waiting for it was a late turn on here. So 3 brief items. First, on consent agenda, item 1F, the agreement with Montana Department of Transportation for Stagecoach Trail had some administrative edits we did send out today. If you have any questions, we don't need it pulled off of consent, but if you do, Ms. Maddox is here to answer any questions if you have them for tonight. Number 2, there's one piece of ex parte communication from Ms. Lita Pepion that was sent to the mayor and council after 3 o'clock today. That pertains to item 3 on the agenda. I think specifically she voiced some concerns about the nuisance property changes relative to vehicles. But that's in the ex parte folder. And then last but certainly not least, I've asked Judge Kolar, and Judge Kolar is here, as well as Chief St. John, if you have any questions regarding item 1L, that is our letter to Yellowstone County. Again, we don't need to pull that off the agenda. They're here if you have any questions for them for item 1L, and that's all that I have, Mayor and Council.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. We'll then move on to public comment on non-public hearing agenda items. So tonight, there's a public hearing later on everything, with the one exception, and that's our consent agenda, item 1, and then all of its subparts. So if anybody is here who would like to comment on anything on our consent agenda, please come forward. We just ask that you tell us your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Hank. There we go. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Hank Jakuzinski, 580 58th Street West. I'm here to speak today on agenda item 1E, that's on consent. MDT is preparing to reconstruct First Avenue North in the next few years. I've engaged in the public engagement process for that project for quite some time, including in conversations with MDT project managers and staff at Sanderson Stewart. The original proposal was originally to rebuild First Avenue North with the same configuration it currently has. That's 3 travel lanes in one direction and parallel parking on each side of the street. At least that's for the part that runs through downtown and over west to Division. The eastern portion is a bit different. The city requested that MDT consider converting First Avenue North into a 2-way street, which I support. It's my understanding that MDT requested the city complete a feasibility study first, though. A few thoughts on that. First of all, any street needs to balance priorities. Traffic volume seems to be MDT's #1 priority, and it seems to be the #1 priority based on the language for the work order to conduct the feasibility study. But there are other priorities that need to be considered. I'll just go over a few. First, economic vitality. Converting the street to a 4 or 5 lane street, like the eastern portion of Central Avenue or like North 27th Street, for example, would negatively impact businesses along First Avenue North and would make it more likely that the vacant storefronts currently on First Avenue North remain vacant, likely because such a design would eliminate on-street parking for those businesses. If a design eliminated parking lanes, it would also put pedestrians right next to moving traffic, creating an environment where fewer people would want to walk. Adding 4 to 5 lanes would also lengthen the number of travel lanes that pedestrians would need to cross at intersections. Also, on multimodal transportation, First Avenue North is clearly identified as a location for future bike lanes on the 2018 Billings Long Range Transportation Plan, the 2023 Billings Long Range Transportation, and the 2016 Billings Bike and Trail Master Plan. So that should be considered too for this as well. My ask to you today is that you provide clear guidance and expectations to Sanderson Stewart that this street needs to do more than just move traffic, and that any proposed design needs to account for that. Essentially, we need to consider, would you rather have a new North 27th Street with 5 lanes of traffic and no on-street parking and little foot traffic, or would you rather have another North Broadway with 2 travel lanes, significant on-street parking, lots of foot traffic, and a number of small businesses and restaurants? So again, I would ask that you kind of guide Sanderson Stewart to come back in a few months with options that promote that. Traffic volumes have fallen on First Avenue North from 12,000 in the early 2000s to 10,000 in the past few years, according to MDT data. There's no need to overbuild this street wider than it already is. Just to close, this project, according to MDT's project website, is intended to, quote, create a sense of place, such as revisiting and defining the urban aesthetics, providing public seating, enhanced pedestrian accommodations, attractive lighting, and more. A primary reason the city has moved to convert streets to two-way is that it helps build a thriving downtown. I hope this project moves us in the right direction. Please tell Sanderson Stewart to bring us back options that move us in the right direction, not the wrong one. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a familiar face at that microphone.
I used to
Somewhere,
live here.
vaguely familiar.
Residents of Billings, staff, council, Mr. Mayor, my name is Danny Chiriki, and I live in the city in Ward 3. I appear before you today to make comments and urge you to, on item 1L, the letter response to the county. And by the way, I assume none of you got my email this morning at this point, because I heard that, okay. I will check into what happened with that. It's basically the text of the piece of paper that I handed out earlier today, or that you all have, except for you, Kendra. Okay, so I'm asking you to either delay your vote on the letter for a couple of different reasons. The major one is because we as council never actually discussed it as a policy matter. It came in through the back door during the budgeting process. We never compared it to other possible things that we could be doing to to increasing the number of available beds at the detention center. One of the things just off the top of my head that occurs to me that we could do is we could be looking at we know that there are a whole bunch of people that are in there longer than they have to be because of the bureaucracy. We should be looking at, can we be paying consultants to come in and facilitate some of these things? I know some of the people that are sitting there are waiting for a mental health evaluation, and the professionals to do that, there are not enough of them who are willing to do what we're paying for it. It's a double tax. I've heard the arguments saying that it's not. Rhetoric versus reason, you know. There are a whole bunch of other things that we need to be talking about. The sobering center is definitely something that people have been talking about for a number of years that are on there. Our county mental health programs are woefully underfunded. And if nothing else, in this letter, we should be putting a paragraph in there asking the city to increase, or the county to increase the amount of money that they are putting into mental health. Right now, it's somewhere around $2 million, and it's barely keeping the doors open for a number of very, very important programs that are in there. If you go through the letter, there's a whole bunch of different things. I think the data is probably the biggest gap that we're facing and taking a look at. I personally intend to start attending the civilian police community board, whatever that is, and start helping them think about what they can be doing with data. But it is definitely a huge need. And honestly, it was one of the ones that I was going to bring up during our budget discussion last year that I didn't get a chance to do. So we need to be thinking about how to make beds available now, not years down the road, but now. And we need to be looking at solutions to bigger problems than just the number of available beds at the county detention center. So I ask you to either delay sending the letter, to spend some time asking experts what they think, what our community partners actually think of this idea, and what they would suggest that they do it. You can do, I would advise you to do both, but if you only do one, definitely start asking our experts and our community partners what they think we should be doing on this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Jeremy Vanetta. My address is 5303 Rich Lane. I'm the chair of the Billings Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and I'm representing that organization. The Billings Chamber of Commerce would like to thank you for your collaboration and agreement last week toward a very respectable offer to county commissioners for a partnership and funding to build the short-term hold facility. Overcrowding at our jail has been an issue for the last 10 years, probably longer. During the 2021 Public Safety Mill Levy, the Billings Chamber heard loud and clear from our police officers how difficult and demoralizing it can be to work towards making Billings a safer community, only to find out that the arrested offenders just went back out on the streets. This is a copy of our business publication that we have at the Chamber of Commerce. It talks about the crime that was going on at Billings and the need to address it then. This was 10 years ago. Billings doesn't need more studies on public safety. We don't need more delays. We need action, and a short-term arraignment hold facility is a great solution to a piece of the public safety puzzle. Mayor and members of council, we encourage your continuing support and truly do thank you for your hard work on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on item number 1? Our consent agenda. Any other comment before we close the public comment period? No one is standing up, rushing the podium, so we'll close the podium or close the public comment period. Look to council. Council, do we have any separations this evening from item number 1? Councilmember Joy Gulick Aspenleiter.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like to separate 1L. Thank you.
Councilmember Gulick.
Yes, I'd like to separate 1E.
1E, contract work order, First Avenue North, et cetera. Councilmember Aspenleiter.
Councilmember Gulick beat me to the punch on one, but I also need to separate item M1 for purposes of recusal.
Thank you. Any other separations? Okay, we'll proceed then with the non-separated items. Is there a motion concerning the non-separate items? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve the consent agenda items except for 1E, 1L, and M1 as stated.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Rupsis. Council, any discussion or questions for staff regarding the non-separated items? Do not see any, so if in favor of the motion, which is for approval of the non-separated items, please say aye. 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 If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Then our first separated item is item 1E, contract for work order 2421, First Avenue North two-way conversion feasibility study. Councilmember Gulick, that was your separation. Did you want to kick that off?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I did have a couple of questions and just some comments before each question. So I think these are directed city engineering and looks like engineer from Sanderson Stewart as well here. So just comments first. So I'm really happy that we have this study in front of us, that MGT is amenable to studying the feasibility of two-way converting First Avenue North from one-way to two-way, and that, in the scope also includes converting Montana Avenue at the same time, because that makes sense, it's a couplet. And, I think the whole reason for this feasibility study is to slow traffic, increase safety, and improve the vibrance of downtown properties along First Avenue North and Montana Avenue. On January 26th, there was an emailed release from MDT that noted that the study would, quote, evaluate 5-lane versus 3-lane configurations, specifically through the central business district near North 27th Street, end quote. And that was rather disconcerting for me. I think another 5-lane road through downtown would be really devastating to properties along the First Avenue North, and I think it runs counter to what we're trying to accomplish with this study, to improve downtown's placemaking quality and economic vitality. I think design is destiny. There's Fred Upton, who is the founder of the Project for Public Spaces, has said, if you plan for cars and traffic, you get cars and traffic. If you plan for people and places, you get people and places. And I think we can extend that further to say, if we plan for economically vibrant downtown, we're going to get an economically vibrant downtown. If we plan for moving large volumes of speeding vehicles through downtown at the expense of safety, placemaking, and economic vitality, we will get large volumes of speeding vehicles moving through downtown at the expense of safety, placemaking, and economic vitality. Here comes the question. Just want to make sure that the city engineering and the consulting engineer understand the context for this study and that we're trying to improve the economic vitality of downtown as well as its public safety, if someone wants to address that.
Okay, Councilmember Gillick, I detect you might want to make a motion. So do you want to have discussion? I didn't hear a motion in your comments.
Oh, I think, I mean, depending on the question, I suspect I'll probably be supporting this, to a motion to
Okay.
support.
So there's no motion on the table at this point?
Well, I want to wait until I hear the answer to the questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Councilmember Golick, Public Works is aware that this project is not a capacity building project. It is really to look at the vitality of downtown and, in theory, improve everything on First Avenue North except for the transportation part of it. So what it would look at is, I think that 5-lane thing from MDT threw you, but let's say it comes back and says that we need to build 5 lanes. Well, if we only build 3, we need to figure out where that traffic's going to go. So the study will look at the transportation network as a whole, where that traffic is going to go, and how it impacts that area too.
Okay, thank you. I guess a few more comments and another follow-up question, Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
So I think as those who are conducting this study are going to need to make sure they consider some increasingly discredited assumptions about the volume of traffic to be planned, as well as the capacity of streets to move volume, and look at evidence. So for instance, as we heard from public comment, that the traffic volume has actually decreased on First Avenue North since 1975, and that's even as we've almost doubled the population of our city. So there's not a basis for projecting traffic volume would increase, and so I'm glad to hear that we're not talking about trying to increase that capacity. But there are examples around the country where streets with only 1 lane of traffic going in each direction can still accommodate the same volume as 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. For example, in La Jolla Boulevard in San Diego, they converted a 5-lane road that had 2 lanes of traffic in each direction and a left lane in the middle to just 2 lanes of traffic, two-way street with 1 lane in each direction. And the on-street parking that was added and a landscape median in the middle, and the volume was about the same before and after. It was actually still 2,200 vehicles. But as a result of the conversion, the average speeds dropped from about 40 miles an hour to 19 miles an hour. Noise levels dropped 77%. Traffic crashes dropped 90%. And so And because the street became safer and much more pleasant for pedestrians, the retail sales rose 30%. So I'm heartened to hear that we're not looking to increase the volume there, and I think we can, again, get a lot of volume. It just speeds that we're trying to cut down. So I guess my last question then would be, is the city engineer and the consulting engineer, are they familiar with a lot of these case studies demonstrating things that I've mentioned? And while the study does not explicitly have public involvement or engagement, can we count on the study to implicitly consider those studies that I've mentioned?
Councilmember Gulick, I can speak for Public Works and that we're aware of those studies. I assume Aaron Clonch is here from Sanderson Stewart. He can speak if he needs to, but I am assuming he's aware of them too.
Very good, thank you. I'd make a motion then to approve item 1E, which is the contract for one-way, First Avenue North, the two-way conversion study.
Second by Councilmember Ripsis. Okay. Okay, if you're done, Councilmember Gillick, we'll continue. Further discussion, we do have a motion. Councilmember Absent-Lighter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the public comment and particularly Hank's engagement in this issue along with many. I mean, I continue to be impressed by his knowledge of these things at such a young age. That was never in that capacity. However, I'm adamantly opposed to this project and to this contract. We have completed a study on two-way conversion downtown. And that two-way conversion study already talked about the same things that we're asking this study to reconfirm and reaffirm, in that when we do conversions, particularly of First Avenue in Montana, downtown, that has a cascading impact to the rest of our travel network in downtown Billings. And we will be chasing that forever and a day to try to figure out how to make the traffic network work. We also put in jeopardy, if we do truly look to change what we're doing on First Avenue with MDT, we run a pretty high risk of losing the MDT funding for that project because we're completely changing the classification. This is where I'll put my MDT commissioner hat on. Like, we will lose the funding for that project in all likelihood, or at least the vast majority of it from MDT, because we are not doing what MDT is looking to do. So that then puts that cost back on the books for the city of Billings. On top of that, we know already from the studies that have been completed that if we make this transition with these two roads in particular, that we're going to be looking at having to improve Division Street to a 5-lane to accommodate traffic, to get traffic from the interstates up to 4th and 6th, the two-way streets, or the one-way streets that are main arterials, to get them out to the heights. So we're looking at a 5-lane conversion to Division that we likely don't have the right-of-way to accommodate right now and don't have the space for. We're going to have to chase at least 6, probably 8 intersections in downtown with upgrades to our signaling and our turn movements and those types of things to the tune of $500,000 at least or more. And then we can possibly do the 2-lane conversion of First Avenue and Montana. This is a decision. If we're going to go this way, we're going to add $8 to $10 million on the low end of transportation projects to try to get downtown to function again. Immediately, we move to a level of service F the day that we convert this to 2-lane, two-way traffic. Immediately. MDT has said that. The city's own studies have said that. That's a reality. And if that's a policy decision that we want to make our downtown like Missoula, that's a policy decision, and we should have that conversation. But I don't think we need to spend another $100,000 to study this, to reaffirm what we've already paid for a study to tell us. And that is that this does not work from a traffic standpoint, it doesn't work. It's going to put us in jeopardy of losing funding from MDT on First Avenue already, and it's going to put in jeopardy what we're doing at Exposition. The people that have the most to lose in this are the Heights. When you're trying to get from, MDT is concerned about Montana Avenue in particular, because we have to be able to get people from the interstate up to the Heights. When we do that, we will force those folks on 27th or out to the Lockwood interchange and completely mess up the rest of the transportation planning that MDT has done and that the city has done to this point, and jeopardize the projects that are already in motion and the funding that's in place for MDT. This is a really, really bad idea. We don't need to spend another $100,000 to reaffirm what we already know. If we're gonna do it, then we should do it without spending $100,000 to double study this. But that's a policy decision. That's not a study decision in my mind. So I'm going to be vehemently opposed to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Further discussion on this motion, as Councilor Ripsis, Councilmember Rowan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to address a couple of things Councilmember Aspenlader said there. First off, Councilmember Gulick and I sat with Debbie Mowing, and I can't remember if Jennifer was there, or Mac, or who else was there, with MDT. And we've raised this possibility. Should we, be talking about this? And they said, yes, please, go ahead and study it. There was not a feasibility study. The staff memo actually says that a couple of years ago, 2019, they were going to look at that, but there wasn't interest from the committee. So they didn't actually dive into it, and they didn't actually determine that these were non-starters. So all the things that Councilmember Aspenlader raised, impacts to division and other traffic signals and those types of things are all part of the feasibility study, and that's why we're doing that, because we haven't actually looked at what would be the impact to this particular change. So I want to thank Debbie and Jennifer Mack and MDT for being willing to look at this. I think it could be a great move for downtown. As we've heard, traffic is at lower volumes today than it was 40 years ago, and we can plan better for the future than if we just kind of assume that we're going to have these off-the-charts record traffic growth that we just haven't seen. We can make a better community for that. But Jennifer, I just wanted to add a couple questions for you, just on a particular of this. In the phase 500, this is the part of the contract where we're looking at alternative scenarios and what their impacts might be. And part of this just concerns me because it sounds like, well, so what it says is we're going to look at the alternatives, and staff and MDT are going to decide if any of the alternatives are fatally flawed. But we don't really define what that is. It just says staff and MDT will, agree on what fatally flawed means. We also say those that aren't fatally flawed, the top performing alternative will be chosen for the next phase of design. But we don't define what top performing means, because as we've heard, a road can perform well if its function is to just move traffic. It can perform well if it's designed to encourage the economic vitality of a region and that kind of thing. So, but we don't define any of that in here. So how are we going to approach those couple things, defining what fatally flawed is and defining what alternative might perform the best?
Councilmember Rupsis, I'm going to have Aaron or possibly Mac address that because I wasn't involved in creating the scope. In my mind, since we know what the goal of the project is to create that economic vitality downtown, that would be the highest performing, but I'll let them speak to that.
Aaron, if you would introduce yourself also.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name's Aaron Clonch. I work for Sanderson Stewart, the consultant that will be potentially signed with this contract. So the question in terms of, what the fatal flaws are, the reason the contract was written the way it was because at this point we didn't know which alternatives we were even going to be analyzing. So we tried to keep it open doored so that we're going to have a project steering committee that's going to outline some alternatives and determine those flaws and what those alternatives that we're going to be using to analyze. So At this point, I guess I don't have an answer to specifically what is a fatal flaw or specifically which alternatives we're going to be looking at, and that's why the contract's written that way.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you. You mentioned a steering committee. Who's going to be on that steering committee that doesn't fall in the realm of, say, traffic engineers? Will we have somebody from planning or economic development or anything like that on that steering committee to help determine what fatally flawed or top performing means?
I don't know if the steering committee's been identified at this point or who it would be. I know city staff, MDT staff, and we could certainly look to additional.
Do you think that would be appropriate to have somebody like that on there? Whether it's a Wyeth or, I don't know who the right person would be, but.
Yeah, so I'm open to any and all whoever the city staff thinks is most beneficial.
All right, thanks, Aaron.
Okay, thank you. Recognize Councilmember Owen, and Councilmember Shaw also had her hand up.
I'm okay. The presentation's laptop was turned off.
Okay.
I was just checking the sound.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Owen?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions. Is that all right?
Absolutely. Who, for who?
Can I start with Jennifer, please? Jennifer, in your response to Councilmember Gulick, you had said that this will look at the entire transportation infrastructure, and I'm not sure if you meant that. Do you mean just the downtown? So we won't be assessing at all the impacts to the heights? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Councilmember Owen, what it will do is address the traffic that is now on First. If we change that to two-way and it decreased that traffic on First, where would it go? So it would be coming from the heights or going to the heights, a lot of that traffic. But it would not address anything outside of that downtown area.
So it won't get up to Expo Drive?
It's not going as far as Expo Drive because it's really, the project is from 9th to Division.
Sure. Okay, that's fine, thank you. And then my next question is for Chris. I guess, Chris, I'm puzzled as to why this is coming forward as a priority right now. I get that everybody wants to revitalize downtown, but downtown is not the only neighborhood in this community that matters. As you know, Main Street has had some intersections that are rated level of service F periodically, and it's a really bad situation when that happens. It's dangerous for cars, for pedestrians. I'm concerned about what I'm hearing, and I'm concerned that we're so completely focused on one corner of town and one solution to a set of problems that we're not looking community-wide at people who live and work in the Heights and need to be able to go downtown to work, people who are traveling through to go either to the downtown or West End. Why are we bringing forward a project that has the potential to do harm to one neighborhood at the expense of another when there's so much more we could be doing? Why is this such a priority?
So, Mayor and Councilmember Owen, one of the drivers, I think, on timing is the fact that the state is looking at a reconstruction of First Avenue. So I think from a timing standpoint, you analyze it before they spend millions of dollars on the project, not after. As far as the other descriptions, I would beg to differ, generally speaking. Look at our capital improvement plan, look where we invest our transportation dollars, and it's not just in the downtown. We invest them all over town. So I can't try to speak as a traffic engineer relative to what goes on from there up into the Heights and out, but the prioritization of this, making it to your agenda now, is related to the fact that MDT is set to do a project. They are designing it as we speak, or soon to be designing, and so the time is now, not after they build the road, would be part of what I would know, and I'd welcome Public Works or Engineering if they've got any more relevant information to answer your question.
Mayor, if I could just follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Have you met with MDT at all, with the, what do they call them, the district administrator or regional administrator, whatever it is for our area? Have you personally met with them?
So I've been in a handful of meetings, both at a very high level relative to this whole transition of moving to local management of projects, to was a part of the conversation when it was asked. Is it a good time to ask for this discussion to open up on First Ave? Do I meet with them on a regular basis? Is that on my calendar regularly? No, I don't want to profess that or state that it is.
No, I'm just trying to understand if you've heard any of the concerns that Councilmember Aston-Leiter has raised, if MDT's raised any of them with you.
I'm not aware, other than to presume through my experience, that MDT is always going to be concerned about traffic movement, and we are too. I think it is incorrect to state that our only concern is about the economic viability of the properties in contrast to moving traffic. And the extreme case I would use is I went to college in what was arguably the first pedestrian mall in the country. No cars, utter failure. That there's a balance that I've seen throughout my career in the cities I've worked in of traffic and pedestrians for economic viability. So I don't view the economic private property value component of this discussion to be void of how will we move traffic both in our downtown and throughout our city, and these couplets are significant traffic movers.
Mayor, I don't think I'll follow up anymore, but I really am concerned about the impact on the Heights and the fact that it's not included in this scope of work. So that's troubling for me.
Okay. Councilmember Gulick, then I've got a question for our city engineer.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And I guess I did want to respond to Councilmember Aspenleiter. And I guess the presumption that there would be undesirable impacts elsewhere in the community. I think when you focus just on moving traffic at the expense of everything else, you end up creating these sort of sacrifice zones everywhere along those major traffic volumed areas. And with the more lanes there are, the more they're speeding. And so Main Street is a prime example of a street that, I've talked to lots of business owners in the Heights who are really frustrated that everyone leaves the Heights. They don't actually stay in the Heights and do business there, and there's not, and so I think that's true also of, if you look at First Avenue North, by and large, there's a couple of blocks exception, but it is not a very healthy area and economically, and that has an impact on all of us as taxpayers as well. The goal of having a very economically vital downtown isn't just to serve the interests of people who have jobs downtown or businesses downtown and properties there. It's actually, it helps support the rest of the community and helps make public services, public safety and parks and trails all more possible. So I think it really does help support the whole community in the extent that to the extent that it also helps downtown. So,
Okay, thank you. Mac, could I get you to the podium and just a question? I just would ask you to follow up on two important concerns that Councilmember Rasmussen mentioned, if I'm interpreting correctly. The first one was the issue of, well, two things. First, this issue of redundancy with the work that was already done on the north-south conversions. My recollection of that, and I haven't gone back to try to look at the documents, was that we clearly were focused on the north-south. There wasn't any effort to do the east-west, but I don't know that that was because it was rejected. It just wasn't that phase. But I'd ask you for your interpretation. Is this something we have already looked at and rejected? For obvious reasons, that's important. And then the second thing, if I remember, Councilmember Aspenleiter was concerned about MDOT's reaction and funding. They're their streets. We're not going to get them to put a bunch of money into something they don't want to do. Very much understood. What is our understanding about MDOT's position on our even studying this issue? I'll just mention I see Mike at the district supervisor, Mike Taylor, at PCC meetings. I've never heard this come up or any concerns raised, but I have no idea what their position is, or do they have a position at this point?
Yeah, so two questions. I might go back in the history from the 2018 study. So, I mean, they did take a high level look to Mr. Aspenleiter's point, and they looked at, and it was a bigger package. It was kind of like the idea of 6th and 4th and 1st and Montana to be converted to two-way. They did identify some fatal flaws on 6th and 4th. 6th had the worst implications there. Now, that was under an assumption of First Avenue being a 3-lane with sort of MDT criteria, identifying some intersection challenges there. So there are some other alternatives here that might be slightly different to that point from the fundamentals.
Okay, so we definitely need to keep the north one-ways.
Correct.
And, but it was
The
not,
difference was it was all of 6th, 4th, 1st, it was, and everything. Now we've kind of, gone back and moved forward. 6 is now, we're leaving that alone, at least at this point. 4th, the same thing from that east-west traffic connectivity.
okay. And of course, there's the impacts on division that Councilmember Aspenlighter was
And those
describing.
are obviously outcomes out of this study. Now, I can't speak for MDT, the second part of your question, this is gonna identify obviously some, based on how the alternatives, ratchet down the tiered scenario there, but there could be impacts that are identified that then, okay, city and MDT have to say, are these acceptable? And therefore, does it make it feasible?
Okay,
as
so
an
that's
outcome.
a bit of an unknown, it sounds like, so. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kennedy?
Go ahead and stay up. The question I have is, if MDOT is going forward and they're already going to do this project, what would the study do to make a change to MDOT's already in progress work?
With their current design project?
With this study here to looking at it, with their current design project that's going forward?
Yeah, I think they would hit the pause button and then look at, okay, design details, for finishing the project. If two-way was feasible, they may change that. Now, there are other outcomes that would have to get, discussed at that point, whether, it's kind of like, this is only feasibility level things. So then they would need to make a determination after that. I mean, do we change our design at this point and move forward with two-way or not?
A follow-up, Mayor. Then, if they're already in design and ready to go, where were we when they were in that process of design? Because we should have made our suggestions or what we have liked to see as they were studying the whole project.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a good answer other than they're piecing that project into multiple phases, so they're still asking some of these tough questions. So now is the time that it's been brought up to deal with that or look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just to clarify that, Max, so Councilmember Kennedy, the presumption was they are ready to start construction tomorrow.
Oh.
That's my takeaway from Councilmember Kennedy's question.
No,
And you didn't seem to reject that.
No, they're still well in the design process.
What is well in the, I mean, is this a two-week process, 2-month year, 2-year?
No, they're in a multi-year design process on First Avenue.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm sorry, okay, Councilmember Rips?
Yeah, just on that point, this, I think, started when we asked to talk to MDT, because we had heard that they were starting this First Avenue North design project. And we said, look, if they're going to start this design work, can we see if this is a feasible, because we don't want them to get through that design work and then have never asked the question, because at that point, everything is locked in. So what we were told directly from MDT was this is the right time to do it. So if you want to potentially have this option out there, now is the right time to look at it. We're not putting them back any. There's early enough. I mean, this wasn't even on the docket until 2027, right? So this is early enough that this is now the right time to be doing this type of feasibility analysis. And if it comes back and says, look, there are all these red flags is why we shouldn't do it, at least we asked the question. They did say they were even open to putting in some infrastructure just in terms of crossings and timings of signals and laying conduit and all that kind of stuff that said maybe in the future, if it doesn't happen now, but in the future, it could be designed so that going to two-way would be easier. All right, so having that kind of feasibility study in our hands, knowing that it may happen in the future, even if it doesn't happen right now, are all good things to help us prepare. And I, for one, am just very appreciative that MDT came to the table and said, yes, let's do it, let's look at it. And that our Public Works Department jumped on that and said, look, this is how we can get this feasibility study done. And I appreciate that. So thank you for bringing this to us. I'm very much looking forward to supporting this. And like I said, if it comes back with all kinds of red flags, they're going to tell us that. That would be the way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Esplanator, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. To clarify a couple things. This is a scheduled in the TCP for 2027. That means the contract is let in 2027. That doesn't mean we start designing in 2027. We start designing and looking for consultant design this year. So pushing this back means this project goes back probably off the TCP at this point and outside the 5-year plan is how MDT would do that. That's how I would do it as the commissioner. So to be clear on that, we are in the process at MDT. We are moving that forward. And this is a little bit late to the game. I think the second part to clarify is MDT says, yeah, we'll look at anything that you provide to every community. We'll consider everything that you present to us. The back part of that conversation is we're not going to, because you present it doesn't mean we're going to accept it. And MDT has considerable concern about the cascading effect on the transportation network. MDT's priorities are different than the city's priorities. I mean, we have that debate all the time, which is why we're working on getting MDT outside the MPO boundary. But the reality is they're not right now. So our priorities as being outlined in this contract are dramatically different and diametrically opposed to MDT. So that should give you, I would say that would give you an indication as to how MDT is going to look at this. And I think there is true risk at us losing the funding because we're going to change the classification of First Avenue to get First Avenue done by MDT and not now then have that thrust upon the city if we want to do this project. MDT can and will consider this, but my comment would be that it is a high unlikelihood that they would be supportive of a two-way transition, particularly a two-way transition with significantly reduced throughput on those roads. And, you know, it's different when you're talking about 10,000 vehicles versus, you know, collectors in our city. That's a different volume. And it can't, statistically and through an analytics, you can't assume that is going to work the same way. It's almost mathematically impossible, and driver behaviors are not going to go for that. So again, I just urge you to be very cautious about the assumption that MDT is going to take this and accept it, because that is not the case, and that's not been my experience with MDT since I've been on the commission.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy, and then we'll try to conclude and put this to a vote soon.
Can I have Public Works again?
Sure. Mac or Jennifer? Or?
Mac would be good. Either of you. The question I have is, and I haven't been privy to any of these meetings or whatever, what is the MDT as they go with their design and everything? What is their plan for the design on First Avenue North and Montana Avenue?
The current design?
Yes, that they're working on right now.
It's for one-way.
It's for one-way.
Correct.
Leaving it the same way it is.
Yeah, with some enhancements, I believe, yes. Actually, the consultant working on that is here to, if you wanted to get into detail, but yes.
So if they're enhancing the one-way and just leaving it the way it is, are they planning on adding more lanes?
I don't believe so. When I say enhancements, we've had some conversations about, you know, truck turning movements, those kinds of things. How do you better connect pedestrians? You know, making it more ADA friendly than it is now, if you will. Some of those kinds of enhancements.
Okay. And one last question, Mayor, is so this study that's here before us would look at a 2-lane on the roadway to give us give MDOT a different perspective? Is that?
That could be one of there's some specific alternatives that we would look at with this study, with a two-way approach there. I guess I don't understand the question.
Well, the concern that I have is if MDT has done the study and is doing the engineering and everything, and they are looking at pedestrian friendly, and they're going to leave it pretty much the one way, the same way it is, but look at pedestrian, how to cross the street, and things like that. What would this study actually do for us? And then to give that study to MDOT and ask them for a change when they're already going with what they've already studied. I'm just confused. I'm confused why we're doing the study to try to convince MDOT when they've already made their mind up.
Yeah, I don't know that we're trying to convince MDT. I don't know that they actually, when they started the design process, I think the design process just started with a one-way. I don't know that that was part of the conversation in the start of that design, I guess, if you will. So it's basically to look at is that there again, this is simply feasibility level for these two-way conversations moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. Can I have Jennifer, since everyone keeps calling on Mac, I'll call on Jennifer. Hopefully you can answer my question. Jennifer, I think you're aware that several years ago we talked about 21st Street underpass and stuff like that. So this current design that MDT is looking at, is there any change in that to allow us to be able to lower Montana Avenue a little bit sooner, kind of segregate that one turn lane off to be able to get under there, have a deeper underpass there at 21st Street?
With the current design of First Avenue North, is that what you're?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so if that were to happen, we're talking years and years down the road for something like that?
Correct.
It has to be another redo of something, so you have to come back and remodel, okay. Thank you, that's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess since we're kind of commenting, I'm going to vote for this, but I really appreciate Councilmember Aspenleiter giving us a hard dose of reality about some of the issues that are out there. I am now thoroughly convinced that I don't know what the right result is here, which in my mind justifies the need for study. And I recognize there may be some real dose of reality in dealing with MDOT on this, but that's why we study these things. That's why we try to dig into it. At least that's my view of it. And $100,000, as these things go, is not a huge sum. So I see the value of it, but it'll be very interesting to see what comes out. Councilmember Shaw, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add a quick comment. I will vote for this. I really appreciate Public Works following up on this with MDT. This is maybe the most sort of collaboration I've seen in 4 years, which is exciting to me. And I would say the corollary to this that I can't stop thinking about is I think it was my first year on council when MDT came and said, we have this tens of millions of dollars. We want to put either an overpass or an underpass through downtown Billings. And at that point, council really pushed back on that idea. It was too far along to really have substantial input. I think we're not there now. We're much earlier in the design phase. So I think this is a very good decision. Thanks.
Okay, further discussion before we proceed to a vote. Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to support this motion. I think this has been studied enough at this time. I am concerned about the city having to take on the cost of the development and maintaining of First Avenue, and then MD. We're going to have to restudy this again because the 21st Street underpass needs to come before the MDT again, and we're going to be looking at this area again. I think this is going to be detrimental to the Heights, and I am concerned in how this is going to impact traffic throughout the entire city. So I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will support the motion because I think studies are really important, and not just allowing a process of design to go forward without considering alternatives really accomplishes have you seen the intersections at 6th Street underpass? I see a lot of fit people in this room, but you are going to really have to book it to cross there. That intersection where the pedestrians, in order to get to Albertsons, because the south side is a food desert, in order to get to Albertsons to get their groceries, they have to cross even more lanes than they did previously. They have to walk on the side of the street that is farthest from Albertsons, walk up to Central Avenue, and cross 2 times to get to Albertsons. And guess what they do? They cut a hole through the fence by the railroad tracks and go across, straight across. They're not taking that long way around. So I think it's very important for us to consider alternatives, and if that takes a study in order to show what alternatives can look at, I'm supporting that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor, ready for a vote? Okay, so the motion is for approval of item 1E. I think you all understand that. So if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
So we'll do a show of hands. If voting in favor, please raise your hand. Voting in favor, council members Gulick, Joy, Cole, Rupsis, and Shaw. If voting in opposition, please raise your hand. Voting in opposition, council members Neese, Owen, Kennedy, Aspenleiter, Tidswell, and Boyette. So the motion fails. And for tonight, that resolves that item. So we will proceed to item 1L, letter of support for Yellowstone County providing financial support to construct the short-term detention facility. Councilmember Joy, that was your separation. Did you want to start us?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I separated so that I could vote against, so I will hold my comments until a motion is on the table and then make my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that council approve consent agenda item 1L, letter of support to Yellowstone County providing financial support to construct a short-term detention facility.
Second.
I heard a second from Councilmember Kennedy. Did you want to speak to your motion and your second?
Yes, Mayor, I think we had a really tremendous discussion about this last week. I think the letter as finalized is generally consistent with the various directions that council gave. I really appreciate all the council members who have engaged in this, who've called with questions, who've tried to learn more, who've come to CJCC meetings. This has been explored and worked on in detail, and just really happy that we're here at this point. Appreciate, Mayor, the letter as it's been drafted, and would urge everyone to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kennedy, you had the second. Did you want to speak to your second?
I would just say I'm going to vote for this. I think we put a lot of hard work into it. We've had a lot of time into it. And I'm back in this, and I'm going to back more patrol and detectives out of the 10 mills. So I'm for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Joy. Okay, Councilmember Neese and Joy.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be supporting this, and I really appreciate all the work that has been done to get to where we're at now, to where we can help our police force and our community. I also think we need to pay attention now. This letter was well written, Mayor. Thank you very much. But I think we need to look at the details that this letter is going to generate. And so I hope the county commissioners can continue to support this as we move forward, and then work on the details to make sure we have an agreement here shortly so we can get construction underway and build this facility quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll be voting against this, not because I don't agree that there's a need, and not because I think that I don't think that this needs to be addressed. It does need to be addressed. I supported the 1.5 million, not the 2 million. I think that the county has resources available to fund this, and starting off the city with a proposal of 2 million is going to put us in a situation where we're going to have to continue to come back to our taxpayers to continue to support it. The county has centrally assessed property taxpayers who can well afford to put into this, where we put this back on our residential property tax owners. I really don't agree with that. Second of all, the language in the letter is not strong enough in clearly stating that this is something essentially that the city is buying beds and we want to be able to use these beds. I think in the past there have been many questions and obstacles and challenges in terms of the city being able to use some of the beds that have been available to make our downtown MAP program work. So I don't see this as a situation where we're being clear about what it is we're actually doing. If we're buying beds, then we need to be able to use them. So I have some concerns that, considering the state of Montana's situation with their prison system, that the state of Montana could very easily benefit from taxpayer money that's coming from our city residents to try and address a problem that we have identified as a city problem. So I don't believe that the language is strong enough to really convey that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm not sure who I should address this question to, if it's Chris or if it's somebody on council. We had a lot of discussion last week about the need to only pay out if we actually get all the 96 beds. Otherwise, we're probably paying for too much. And I'm just finding the wording of the letter a little confusing. It says the one-time fixed financial contribution by the city will be contingent on the completion of all 96 beds as proposed. So that makes me think, okay, we've got it. But then down later it says that we're going to have at least 30 beds no later than 15 months after the county signs a design contract. I'm just not comfortable that this says you're not getting that second payment until all 96 beds are open. And I'm not sure, I thought that's what we were discussing last week, but if I misunderstood that, maybe it was just me. I wanted to make sure that second payment doesn't go until all 96 beds are open and operational.
Thank you, Councilmember Ripsis. Just to kind of inquire of you, so your concern would be there'd be partial construction or first floor, for example, or 30 beds or something short.
Exactly. The design says 96 beds, and that's what they started doing. They only build 30 and then we don't have to pay any kind of late delivery wees or anything like that. And the other 66 beds never get built, or the second floor never gets built. And we've still contributed we'll deal with the other issue on its own. We've still contributed a lot, probably more than we would if we were only going to get those 30 beds.
Okay, thank you. Just to state my understanding, which is Councilmember Ripsis, is that one way or another, the MOU would make that very clear that they don't get full payment until all 96 beds are paid, or all 96 beds are made operational. Council, we can discuss that, but I guess my inclination would be to communicate that to the drafter of the MOU, Gina Dahl, and if everybody's in agreement, nods their heads, she'll just make sure that's crystal clear in the MOU as opposed to in this letter. But certainly, everybody should comment on that if you have any views. Councilmember Neese.
Mayor, I think as I stated, I think the MOU is really where we need to focus on. This letter is general enough to insinuate or suggest that, and our discussion was open to the public. I think we all agree, Tom, I agree with that needs to be in there. As well as some of the other things, maybe not the number of beds I said at the last meeting, but I'm agreeable to kind of make sure that we look at that MOU closely, and maybe we need to look at that MOU in some other meetings and that sooner. But it is important that MOU spell it out by the details. That's going to be that's the contract, and so I agree with you, Tom. All those things we talked about in the meeting. Let's make sure it's in the MOU.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the motion. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? Nobody's raising their hands, so the motion is for approval of item 1L. I would then sign this letter and send it off on behalf of the City Council to the County Commissioners if the motion passes. So we'll proceed to vote. Okay, if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
Councilmember Joy votes in the opposition. I believe all other council members voted in favor. Councilmember Shaw is giving a thumbs up in affirmation of that. So, okay, that concludes item 1L. Councilmember Boyette.
Mayor, I'd like to approve the number 1M1 as stated.
Second.
Thank you very much. Second by Councilmember Neese. Bills for January 22nd, 2024. Motion is for approval. Any discussion? See none. So if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Aspenleiter not voting. Is there a motion for item 1M2? Oh, I apologize. Thank you. That was not separated. That was part of the consent agenda previously approved. Very good. That brings us then to the regular agenda. Denise, would you read item 2?
Public hearing for low-income multifamily housing project, Rose Park Plaza Apartments. No action is required this evening.
Thank you very much. We'll have a public hearing on item number 2. But it'd be nice to have a little bit of an introduction here for what we're doing, Chris. There's no vote, no action, it's my understanding. But it looks like who would like to make that little intro?
So, Mayor, I'll go ahead and start. I think we've got Cassie Buss online that's going to do a quick presentation on this matter, so I'll turn it over to her.
Very good. It's all yours.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Cassie Buss. I'm an attorney out of Missoula, Montana. And thank you, Mayor, council members, and members of the Billings community for being here tonight to discuss this project. I've got a little PowerPoint, so I'll share my screen real quick. All right, so the Rose Park Plaza Apartments are owned by Rose Park Plaza Apartments, LLC. And they are, it's a 112-unit multifamily housing project located in Billings. The project currently is rent and income restricted and provides homes to eligible tenants meeting the income requirements. Their units are spread across 12 two-story buildings, which were initially built in 1980 and were rehabilitated and renovated with low-income housing tax credits in 2007. The project is located near Rose Park at 2325 Avenue C and includes various amenities such as an on-site management office, laundry facilities, and 3 playgrounds. The parties are applying for the property tax exemption available to qualifying affordable housing projects under Montana Code Annotated 15-6221. Part of the requirements for that application include holding a public hearing to solicit comments on the project in connection with community housing needs. So that is why we're here tonight. As Denise mentioned, there's no vote or action on behalf of council required. We're merely giving an opportunity for public comment. The project provides 112 homes with rents restricted and based on income. They target tenants at or below 50 and 60% of the area median income. The units are currently restricted through a HAP contract with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as a Montana Board of Housing deed restriction. The HAP contract is set to expire in 2027, and the parties are currently seeking a 20-year extension of that to ensure the project will continue to provide affordable housing for years to come. They're also planning various rehabilitation and updates to the project, which include interior and exterior upgrades, improvements to increase energy efficiency, improve tenant safety, modernize the units, and provide additional tenant amenities. Apartments will get new windows, new solid wood kitchen countertops, cabinets, flooring, energy efficient appliances, new bathroom vanities, and new plumbing fixtures. They will also be doing exterior improvements such as new playground equipment, aesthetic improvements such as repainting the exterior of the buildings, updating landscape, and various improvements to the common areas. They'll be rehabilitating the on-site management office, installing a surveillance system to increase site security, and completing upgrades and replacements to the HVAC systems. As part of the requirements for the exemption from certain property taxes under MCA 156221, this qualifying low-income housing project is holding this public hearing today in front of the unit of the local government where the project is located. We invite members of the public to provide comments or questions regarding this project in relation to community housing needs. As mentioned, there's no vote or action on behalf of the council required today. And we also encourage everyone to submit comments to the Montana Board of Housing regarding affordable housing in your area at the information on the screen. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me directly at the contact information on the screen, or Sam Horowitz, who is part of the property owner team. And with that, I just like to invite you guys all to comment. Thanks again for this opportunity, and thank you all for allowing me to present by Zoom so I don't have to navigate that snowstorm in a 5-hour drive from Missoula. I sure appreciate that.
Yeah, you would not want to be doing that tonight. No. Well, thank you, Cassie. It's exciting to see plans to redevelop what's a really important housing project in Billings and has been for many decades. So this is an exciting step forward. Council, I don't know if you've got questions for Cassie. This would be a good time before we open it up for a public hearing. Any questions for Cassie or other things? Cassie, I think you're off the hook, at least right now. So we will open this up for a public hearing. This is an opportunity for the public to be heard on item number 2. I just ask that you come to the podium and tell us your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes or so. Is there anyone who would like to be heard on item number 2? Any comment on item number 2? No one is coming forward. No one arranged to appear online, so we'll close the public hearing. And Cassie, with that, it's my understanding that we've met our legal obligations here. Is there anything else that you would like to comment on before we move on to our next item?
No, thank you very much and have a great day.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes that item number 2. Denise, would you read item number 3?
Public hearing and resolution assessing nuisance property abatements. Staff recommends approval.
Welcome, Tina.
Hi, good evening. I shouldn't take as long this time. These are pretty quick and easy. So we have 2 properties tonight for abatement assessments. You have some before and after pictures there. Is this thing working? There we go. Good. Doesn't want to load. Can you just put on the last slide? Thanks. No, the last one. The third one. So the pictures. There it is. Okay. So 2 property abatement assessments tonight, one at 904 South 29th, the other at 1404 Miles. You have some before and after pictures there and a description in your packet tonight about what kind of work was done there. Those have remained in compliance as well. So no issues there. Do you have any questions?
Okay.
Told you it was going to be easy.
Yeah. Any questions for Tina? All right. I don't see any. Thank you, Tina. This is a public hearing. Council will open it for public hearing, and then we'll come back to council. Is there anybody who would like to be heard on the nuisance property abatements, which are item number 3? If so, please come to the podium. Any public comment? This is a public hearing on item number 3 on the nuisance abatements. Any public comment? No one's coming forward. We'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the resolution assessing nuisance property abatements as recommended by staff.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Motion is for approval of the abatements as presented. We'll proceed to Councilmember Bernice.
Again, I just can't thank Tina and your department enough for what you do. So these 2 properties here, the neighbors there now don't have to put up with that. So thank you very much, and tell your crew thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I'll relay the message.
Very good. Any other comments? All right, we'll proceed to a vote. The motion again is for approval. If in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Tina. Are you also the presenter on weeds? Go ahead.
That would be me. I gave Andy a night off tonight, so. We have 32 properties total. The original information that was sent to you was weeks ago. We've since had properties pay their bill. So the assessment total has decreased. I believe it was 5 more properties that eventually did pay. I put the assessment formula up there for you because I know that's a question each time. And then I just ask that you, before we get these filed with the treasurer, if there are others that come in and pay, that you give us the authority to go ahead and make that adjustment. I did speak with Mike Pigg, and they will be increasing their $90 an hour fee to $100. We're going to try that for this coming season. They haven't increased those fees in several years from what he's told me.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Boyette.
Tina, can you refresh everyone, especially we have 2 new council members? What is your procedure for notifying the person that they have to take care of the weeds? What's the process?
Sure. We get a complaint, we send a letter, we give them 10 days. And prior to this season, we send it to cut. And that would be the Parks Department. And that's why they send us a bill. If you go to the next screen, it has the stats there for the last several years. Starting this season, our compliance rates are creeping up, but I really want to cut down that number that we send to cut. So we're going to try something new this year, and we're going to post one final notice on the actual property instead of just sending a letter. And that's going to go somewhere conspicuous on the property so they know we're going to be sending this to cut if you don't contact us. And then we usually, if they do contact us, we give them a couple days. But we try to get those done as soon as possible. You're welcome.
Very good. Any other questions for Tina? Okay, thank you very much. We'll open up for our public hearing. This is also a public hearing, item number 4, the weed abatements. If you'd like to comment on item number 4, please come forward. Is there any public comment on item number 4, weed abatements? No one is coming forward, so we will close the public hearing and back to council. Councilmember Bernice.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution assessing weed abatements as recommended by staff, including those who pay, removing those who pay before the filing.
Very good. Second by Councilmember Tidswell. Any discussion? Councilmember Bernice.
Mayor, again, I'm going to compliment the Code Enforcement Department. Your question was great, Councilmember Boyette. Having, she's looking for ways to avoid, the conflict with the community, having them take care of themselves. Again, that's a great idea, put the signs out front because that'll maybe get their attention and do some. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing these numbers reduced because of the things that you're thinking about and your staff are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. The motion is for approval, item number 4. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is item number 5. Denise, would you read item number 5, please?
Public hearing and first reading ordinance for zone change 1042, located at 655 West Wicks Lane. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 review criteria.
Very good. Before we jump into this, Councilmember Aspenleiter, you have a comment on this item.
Yeah, I will be recusing myself from the vote on this as my company is representing the applicant.
Very good. Thank you. Nicole.
Good evening. So this is zone change 1042 on West Wicks Lane. It's currently zoned N3, suburban neighborhood. The proposed zoning is public 2, civic and institutions. For the recent purchaser of the property of 8 acres of Grace Point Church. They do intend to build a new church facility on the property, and so it's appropriate for them to rezone it so that they can do that. And hopefully this works. It does. So public 2 is intended for civic institutions like churches, schools, even government offices, healthcare offices, adult and child daycare, indoor and outdoor recreation facilities. It does allow residential uses if those residential units are specifically related to the primary use on the property. So a minister's house or things like that are allowed. Any new development, of course, requires conformance with all the zoning, building, and site development requirements. N3 does allow a church by special review, but the applicant's preference is to just be in the right zone. Maybe, okay. So here's the zoning map. As you can see, there's a lot of different zones happening here. West Wicks Lane is an arterial street. So we have public 2 to the east, where an existing church is. We have corridor mixed use 1. We have neighborhood mixed use to the west, as well as mixed residential zoning to the northwest, northwest and north of the property. It is surrounded, except for the church, the existing church side, by streets. Some of those streets are incomplete. They don't have all of the required curb, gutter, sidewalk installed. And so those will be part of any development on the property, that they will complete those street improvements as required. There's a tiny little piece of public 2 zoning down in the southwest corner, and that's owned by the Billings Heights Water District, and it's one of their pumping stations. So that's already zoned public 2. To the south, across West Wicks Lane, is mixed residential 2. There's a little sliver of neighborhood office, as well as public 1 for Castle Rock Park. Here's a subject property, a recent aerial. I'm not sure if those are prairie dog holes or if those are test holes for soils, because they will have to do a lot of soil testing before they put a building on the property to make sure they build the foundation correctly. So we'll have some evictions apparently. Maybe. Oh, now I went too fast. So the zoning commission is recommending approval. They are recommending that based on the fact that it meets the growth policy, the infill policy, and the 2006 Billings Heights Neighborhood Plan, which will be kicking off an update to that plan in the next few weeks, once we get a consultant on board. It is compatible with adjacent uses and adjacent zoning. It will kind of complete this block that has been undeveloped since the 1950s. As I said, it's on an arterial street. So locating where those entry driveways are to the property will be important choices that city engineering will work with the applicant on. So those are kind of the highlights. Here's the subject property. If you're standing on Wicks Lane, looking north, it's 8 acres of vacant ground that hasn't been developed yet. This is looking east on West Wicks Lane, and then looking south and east across West Wicks Lane at those multifamily apartments across the street. The West Wicks Lane frontage is fully developed. It has the curb, the gutter, the sidewalk, or in this case, I think it's a multi-use path. Here are the zone change criteria that the Zoning Commission reviews and makes recommended findings to you on. Again, here is the aerial map and the zoning map, and I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Nicole, are there questions for Nicole? I also see in the audience the applicant or Pastor Jim Tabor and representatives from the church board. So if people have questions for them as well, this would be an appropriate time. We'll have a public hearing also. Any questions for Nicole? Don't see any. So thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. So council will move, this is a public hearing, so if anybody else would like to be heard on this, this is your opportunity. Please come to the podium. Just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name.
Mayor, Council, thank you for your time tonight. I'm Taylor Kasperick. I'm with Performance Engineering, agent for Grace Point Church. As you mentioned, Jim and Brandy are here tonight as well. They're very excited for this project. If you're not familiar with Grace Point Church, they currently operate out of Medicine Crow Elementary School there in the Heights on weekends, and this will really give them their own place to call home and their congregation. One of the maps that Nicole pulled up, it really shows the mix of residential and community that's in this area, and we think that the church will help tie all of that together as well. One of the items that's noted in the packet that was provided to council is that we were planning on an access off of Wicks. Since that time, we've coordinated with the engineering department, and both accesses will come off Iverness, actually, because there is a no access strip along Wicks Lane. So with that, that's about all I have to present, but I'm more than willing to answer questions, and as noted, the owner's here as well. So
Thank you very much. Any questions for Taylor?
all right, well, thank you very much.
Easy night.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Other public comment on item number 5. Would anybody else like to comment on item number 5 before I close the public hearing? No one's coming forward, so we will close the public hearing. Back to council. Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, I would recommend, having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance for zone change 1042 and adopting the findings of fact of the 10 review criteria as recommended by the Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese makes a second. Discussion. Would either of you like to speak to your motion or to your second? Nope. Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, the plot of land's been up there, like you said, since the 50s, just not being anything done. So it's nice to see someone developing it, community up there. So I'm looking forward to seeing more people up in the Heights. They're going to start coming up to the Heights. They're going to like the Heights a lot, and they're going to move up to the Heights and start opening businesses in the Heights. So thank you.
Does that mean all the prairie dogs are coming to the west end?
Prairie dogs to the west end.
Okay, what,
yes.
get a trade? All right. I don't know if that's fair. Councilmember Gulick.
Yeah, well, the council's only voting on zone change, and I'm very favorable and welcome this use there. I want to just let the applicant know some of my thoughts on something you might consider in terms of as you work with performance engineering on the master plan for the project. You know, it's a very large property, as you're well aware, I'm sure. I would be inclined to, or favorably inclined towards, if you wanted to, you have your building footprint for the church and room for expansion, but, taking up a lot of the site with off-street parking, I think you should make use of as much on-street parking as you can. It helps make the whole neighborhood, slows traffic, and it means that maybe a lot of your property could be used for housing. I'd be, if you wanted to, in the future at some point, make portion of it, like NX1 housing or something like that, I certainly support that as well. I think it could be a way of helping raise a lot of money, capital for you for your project now, for expansion in the future as well. So just some of my thoughts. Welcome to your development of the property, though.
Very good, thank you. Other comment? Any other discussion on the motion? Before we proceed to vote, anything else? Going once, going twice. All right, don't see any other comments. So the motion is for approval of item 5, consistent with the staff recommendation and the recommendation of the zoning commission. If in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That concludes item 5 and our regular agenda, and bring us to public comment on non-agenda items. So anything that was not on our agenda tonight, this is an opportunity to be heard.
Catherine Card, 2815 4th Avenue South. I don't know if you remember, but in 2022, starting then, I began to come to you about the Colonial and about other John Scoggie properties, about the need to deal with them because of the high cost of police response and all kinds of work to respond to what was happening there. And when I initially came to you, as I recall, your response was, well, that's not really in our bailiwick, let's get you guys in the community, like the task force, and other people need to deal with them. And so it was frustrating to come and to talk to you about it. But along the way, something changed, and somehow the city, code enforcement and others began to get involved with that. And the property improved. It's now going through another period of deterioration, but things happened with that. And earlier this month, Council Member Rupsis wrote a letter to several people asking to look at eminent domain as a possible way of using that or converting that property, and also partnering with Riverstone Health and Homefront and the Continuum of Care. I raised the issue to you and you initially dismissed it, and yet somehow you worked into trying to deal with it. So I have been raising the issue of a low barrier shelter, a real honest low barrier shelter, to you for over 2 years, probably more like 3, asking you to lead the way for that, to lead the community in finding a way to put together a truly honest, well-run, accountable, low barrier shelter for our community members who are unhoused. You have resisted and you resisted what I've said, to the point that sometimes you try to interrupt me. You sit looking away and looking at papers in front of you. You even comment on a hot mic about me. And so, I'm not being met with a lot of respect for this. But I see some hope, and I'm asking you for that hope, that in some way you change. You look at this, that you are responsible to lead this community into housing folks that have no other shelter. It's blizzarding out again tonight. And all the people that we showered today are sleeping out. And I want you to consider your role as leaders, just like the communities of Bozeman, Missoula, and other communities have done, that it is your role to lead this community and to build alliances within this community. And it can be private organizations and private people. But you are the leaders, the elected leaders of this community, so I ask you to do it. One real quick thing, and I'll hand these things out to you, is this is Stanley. Stanley died this last week supposedly from exposure. Been on the streets a long time. He is not, he and my buddy Bill have been referred to as transient, as bums. Bill has been called Patio Bill by city officials. They are not that. They are precious children of God. There is a spiritual side to this, that is where holy is found, is in helping folks that are suffering, helping folks in great need. Thank you. May I
Sure.
give?
You bet. Very good. Thank you.
I also included an invitation to help with showers, if you would like.
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comment, items not on our agenda? No one's coming forward, so we'll close that. Any council initiatives? None. So, council, we are adjourned. Travel safely on the roads.